What if an ancient Greek story wasn't really about gods and heroes at all? What if it was actually a map for our own inner journey? That's what we're diving into today with Goethe's classic play, Iphigenia in Taurus. We're not looking at it as a stuffy historical drama, but as this profound allegory for the evolution of the human soul.
And this quote right here, this is the key that unlocks the whole thing. It's all about seeing the play as a journey from this dark, mechanical world ruled by force and just survival into something so much higher, a state of enlightened humanity.
So, we're going to follow this journey of inner evolution step by step. We'll see how each character isn't just a person in a story, but really an aspect of our own consciousness. And every conflict they face, that represents a critical test on the path to becoming a fully realized human being.
Okay, so our journey begins in what we can call a world of force. We're on the shores of Taurus, and you can just think of this place as representing a world governed by raw ancient power. It's here, in this so-called barbaric land, that we meet the key players in this internal drama. Here's where it gets really interesting. These aren't just people. They're forces within a single consciousness. You've got the exiled soul, the will that's stuck in a cycle of force, the haunted mind, and the practical intellect. All of them are in conversation and in conflict inside this one big story. So let's start with Iphigenia. She is the soul, pure, divine in her origin, but she's exiled in a world that feels totally alien and cold. Her deep, deep longing for her home in Greece, that's the soul's natural yearning to get back to its divine source. She is that initial state of our own inner purity, just trying to survive under all this external pressure.
And where does that pressure come from? Well, it comes from King Thoas. Now, he's not just some simple villain. He embodies the will of the material world itself, a world that runs on force, on possession, on the old laws of blood. When he demands to marry Iphigenia, that's the world trying to own the spirit. And his threat to bring back human sacrifice? That's a regression into our most primitive state of violence.
And this just lays out the central tension perfectly, doesn't it? It's a clash between two totally different ways of being. On one side, you have Iphigenia's inner purity and her belief that her words, her truth, can actually change things. And on the other side, you have Thoas, who represents external demands and the threat of brute force if he doesn't get what he wants. All right, so now the soul has to face its great test. The conflict gets way more complicated with the arrival of two new figures, Orestes and Pylades. They literally wash ashore, and they bring with them not just danger, but the inner demons and earthly temptations that are going to define Iphigenia's entire journey. See, Orestes is Iphigenia's long-lost brother, and he carries with him this heavy shadow of the past. He's the living embodiment of their family's infamous curse, a vicious cycle of betrayal and violence passed down through generations. He is unresolved trauma, made flesh. Orestes is really the perfect allegory for the haunted mind. I mean, it's not hard to see the parallels to our own modern struggles, right? He's being chased by the Furies, but Goethe frames them as phantoms of his own making. They're his inner demons. He is totally fractured, drowning in guilt, and just the image of a soul that has completely lost its center. So here's the crucial part. How is he healed? Iphigenia doesn't use any magic. She just is. Her steadfast goodness, her pure tone, acts like a mirror, reflecting wholeness back to her brother's shattered mind. And in that atmosphere of pure clarity, the Furies, they just vanish. They can't exist there.
But just as one crisis fades, a new, much more subtle one emerges with Pylades. He's the practical intellect, the strategist. And he comes in with the ultimate question, the one that deepens this entire allegory. Do you have to get your hands dirty to make it in this world?
And here it is, that classic internal conflict. Pylades argues for a necessary lie, He says survival justifies bending the rules. But Iphigenia, who represents the beautiful soul, feels a totally different kind of necessity, the internal need for truth. She's caught right between escaping the world and remaining true to herself. This brings us right to the climax of the entire allegory, the leap into grace. Iphigenia is standing at a crossroads, and her choice isn't just going to determine her own fate. It's going to determine the soul's entire path forward, from a world of force to a world of grace. This breaks down her decision so well. First, you have the temptation, the easy, practical lie. Then, the crisis of conscience. And then, the leap. She chooses what Goethe calls sacred candor, just radical, terrifying honesty. She tells the king everything. She is literally wagering that his own humanity is a more powerful force than his anger or his laws. And this is the pivot point of the whole story. By throwing strategy out the window and choosing truth, she's trying to change the very rules of the game. She's betting that grace is a higher law than force. It's an incredible risk.
So what happens when you make a radical wager like that? Let's explore the powerful consequences of Iphigenia's choice and see the ultimate resolution of this amazing allegory.
And her wager pays off. King Thoas lets them go. But why? It's because her absolute moral purity kind of compels the world around her to harmonize with it. By seeing her humanity so clearly, so purely, he's forced to recognize his own. The barbarian king is transformed into a truly human being.
His final command is so simple, but it's unbelievably powerful. Go then. With just those two words, the ancient law of blood and sacrifice is completely overcome by a new law, the law of love and recognition. It's a total spiritual alchemy. And this brings us to the destination of the whole journey, humanitate. This is Goethe's word for that higher state of consciousness. It's that place where our primal, historical drives are transcended by an ethical freedom, where we finally recognize the divine spark in each other.
So at the end of the day, the entire play maps out this evolution of consciousness. It shows us the path from being slaves to our own history, that inherited Tantalid's curse, to becoming free, ethical individuals. Iphigenia herself embodies what Goethe called the eternal feminine, that force of pure being that's always drawing us upward toward our better selves.
And this, right here, is the ultimate takeaway. True freedom isn't won by clever tricks or by brute force. It's won through the profound courage to be vulnerable, to be truthful, to be purely human. That inner light is what finally silences our inner demons and allows us to see the humanity in others, turning strangers into brothers.
It's such a powerful and timeless message. So if this exploration sparks something in you and you want to dive deeper, the original text is an absolutely incredible read. And you can find a ton of great analysis from places like the Goethe Society. I really hope this gave you a new lens to see this masterpiece through.